Hello, everybody. The Column of Curae is glad to introduce today's resource person, Miss Priyanka Chakraborty, to discuss upon foreign LLM and mediation as career opportunity. She is founder and director of TRH, the Resolution Hub, OPC Private Limited. He is an accredited mediator and arbitrator from Indian Institute of Arbitration and Mediation, Kochi. Further, she is also General Secretary of Africa Asia Mediation Association and the Executive Secretary and Permanent Faculty at Bangladesh International Mediation Society. Today, we will be asking few questions to her and accordingly she'll address it. So, ma'am, just tell us that is opting LLM course in foreign country beneficial for student? If so, then what are the criteria one should look into while choosing an university abroad?
Right. Thank you so much for such a generous introduction. Uh, and I am glad that come up with such brilliant platform and are trying to do something really nice in the field of law and also at the very early age of being in the college. So congratulations to you guys, first of all. And yeah, so if we talk about LLM abroad, well, I would say my criteria for picking up a university was that I was very clear in my head what subject I wanted to pursue. So I wanted to pursue dispute resolution as my LLM course, and I wanted a specialization in it. So across the world, I started figuring out and filtering which universities actually present those. And then I tried to get into one of the best universities possible. It's a cliché criteria, but it was definitely mine. So I wanted to get into a university which is uh, having a good QS ranking. Uh, that was my major criteria. And secondly, New Zealand was a country which was not a very common, study destination for a lot of people. So that triggered me, and I wanted to get into a country and experience its process and life. So that is how I did for myself. If I have to advise somebody to do it, I would definitely say that you should try and figure out what subject you want to pursue for your masters, and then try and figure out which universities provide courses specifically for it and which are the better courses. But the ground rule is you have to do your own research. You have to figure out. You can go to a lot of places. Like I took help from the Chopras, so they helped me, pin down a couple of universities from the vast options that we have. But all in all, at the end of the day, it is definitely what you want to see in a university, and it is extremely important to do your masters from a good ranking university, because then it gives you the perspective of life and a lot of other experiences uh, apart from the education system. Yeah.
Uh, do you feel it to be beneficial for the students to go for foreign LLM?
Uh, well, if I'm supposed to be talking about how beneficial it is, it's a bit difficult for me to say that outright, because it depends on what you want out of your life. So what I learned from my LLM abroad was a brilliant way to understand and study the subject that I definitely learned. What I learned apart from that was how to lead a life, and I learned a lot of things about life and professionalism which I wouldn't have if I was just stuck here. One thing that I learned and I always wanted to propagate was, when I did my master's there, we were never taught definitions. We would always discuss definitions. And I realized then that you have legal definitions coming from only non Indian nationals or people from other countries. We rarely have legal definitions given by Indians per se. I realized that time that we miss out on that because we focus more on mugging definitions rather than creating definitions of our own. So these are definite things that you learn. And apart from that, if you need a good CV, if you want to look forward to having a good CV, of course, but it's not beneficial. I mean, no, it's not like if you are missing out on a lot if you're not doing an LLM from abroad. That's not the case. But I would still suggest that ever in your life you get a chance, probably go and do a diploma from a university abroad, so that you get a taste of how life is otherwise as well, Yeah.
Absolutely, ma'am. Moving towards the next question. Ma'am, every time you observe that our foreign LLM, we have to submit good SOP, right? Ma'am, it will be really nice if you elaborate these issues where the students need to focus.
Right. Foreign universities, they actually rely on the SOPs because they try to understand how much a person wants to pursue that particular subject. I'll make a confession. I wrote my SOP for about a month and a half. I probably made 70 copies of that one document of SOP because I wanted to make sure that the university, once, the moment they read my SOP, they know that I really, really want to learn the subject. So that is one thing which is really, really integral. You do have a lot of companies and agencies now who offer to write SOP on your behalf. I don't think that's a really good idea. It doesn't take a lot until and unless you definitely want it to be like a perfect heart and soul document for yourself. But the essential ingredients that I wrote about were how much I wanted to pursue the subject A. Secondly, what other things interested me in my life other than academics? So it's really important because when you go to a foreign university, they try to give you a holistic approach to life rather than just knowing your subject. They would be interested in taking you to treks. They would be interested in taking you to picnics and all of that. So they also need to know how social you are and how well you can mix and match with other cultures. So, particularly what are your hobbies and, how do you seek the society and what do you want to actually earn out of that LLM? So you can't say, I want to bag a good job and, have a good pay. You can't say things like that. So you really need to, pen down uh, things about how your education is actually going to make some change in the society and how you are going to pursue the subject further. So never say that you're doing an LLM for a job. You really need to push it through. Like universities really buy this when you say that I want to pursue the subject because I'm interested in the subject. I want to go further and do research on that subject. I want to keep doing that. So universities really like and appreciate that. So yeah, definitely try and write that down even if you don't believe in it.
Okay, ma'am. Another thing, ma'am, what is your views with respect to settling abroad post LLM? Like, is there any scope or something?
Yeah, Namrata, it's a very controversial topic, at least for me. Uh, it's a funny thing, we when I went to Auckland, actually, I'll share my experience because that's the maximum extent of experience I have had. When I went there, my first agenda was I will not work for any cafeteria or warehouses where generally students work to earn their weekly pays. It gives you a easy cash and it's also easy to do such jobs with your university work. So a lot of people do it. So my whole and sole idea was if I have to work abroad because I'm going there to study. So if I want to work, then I will work only in a law firm. And that's how, fortunately, I actually bagged a law firm job. And when I was leaving that job, most of my classmates were non-Indians. They were majorly Germans, and they're people from Indonesia and Tanzania and a lot of other countries. So everybody like really appreciated the fact, and they were overjoyed, and they were so happy that I was coming back to India, so they would visit me. Only my Indian friends were so sad because they were like, how can you leave a job and go back? Like, that's not, I mean, are you stupid? How can you just let go of a job like that? So, if you ask me about my understanding of settling abroad, it's not that it's not possible, but definitely the legal fraternity is very small as compared to the tech fraternity. And of course, the laws are different, so it's going to take some time for anybody to seep into that country's understanding of what the law is and the legalities and the jurisdiction. All the ideas change a lot, but it's not impossible. But if you personally ask me, it is always better to come back. You learn so many different things. You learn so much about life. You learn office management. You learn so many things there. And, so if we don't bring it back, then who will? So I am not a very big fan of settling abroad after studying, but I definitely will suggest anybody and everybody who ever has an opportunity, even if you're working 30 years down the lane and you get a chance to visit a university and do a course for 6 months, try and do that. It's a real good learning. Uh, so yeah, that's my take about settling abroad. But if you really want to settle abroad, the first thing that you should really do is uh, try and keep trying to approach law firms and any legal department for internships. Okay, so they will not pay you for a long time until you are really fortunate. So they will not generally pay you for a long time. You have to keep pursuing and try to qualify the bar exam of any country. So New Zealand also had the bar exam. So if you can qualify that, then you automatically get into the system. But one thing to be kept in mind, the bar exams abroad are not as comfortable as it is in India. Okay, so it's pretty tough. And people actually end up taking coaches and a lot of training to clear those bar exams. So yeah, that's my understanding.
Yeah, ma'am, totally get it. Another fact, ma'am, you just told that you chose the subject dispute resolution, right?
Mhm.
Ma'am, what made you choose that subject? Because it's presently it's in like mainstream, but few years before it was not that mainstream subject. So yeah.
Yes, that's actually a very good question. Honestly speaking, Namrata, it's still not a mainstream subject. When I talk about dispute resolution, 90% of people, mostly from legal fraternity, they believe that I'm practicing arbitration. And honestly speaking, even I had the similar idea before going to Auckland. So I thought whenever you're talking about dispute resolution, it's arbitration. What interested me in arbitration at that point or negotiation, because I had an opportunity to work with Food Panda. And there I was working with their international team, and I had to keep uh, a contact with a lot of vendors from Thailand and Hong Kong. And my job was basically to get them on board. Okay, so there was a lot of contractual problems and a lot of contractual hassles which could come along because I was operating from India. The vendors were in Hong Kong. The company was German in origin. So, there was a lot of laws coming and overlapping. So, the only way to settle all of those were the negotiations that happened, in those conference calls that we had. So, I ended up realizing somewhere that, if you're trying to look at the market in a global perspective, or if you're just trying to resolve something or bring out a solution, probably law is not the only answer. Rather, you actually have other solutions which are much, much more suitable than law at that point. That actually interested me towards dispute resolution. I got a fair share of my idea about how to negotiate, but I did not know that this is such a vast subject. It's a huge, huge subject in itself. So I went through with this dispute resolution idea and I wanted to do arbitration majorly. And I wanted to do mediation on the side just to see, as luck has to play its own role. I ended up with my mediation subject as the first paper, and I loved it so much that I just kept digging into it and I never entered into arbitration any further. So, yeah, once I started doing mediation, I realized that mediation is not only a subject, it's also a way of life. And it might sound really philosophical, but it is true. It is true because mediation is something which is present, which has always been there. If you talk about the Indian culture, if you talk about any old tribal communities or anybody, it has always been there. Rather, the court systems and the law that we are doing at current time is more of a colonial idea. And the fun part is now the European countries and UK is moving towards sorted mediation, and we are still struggling with litigation and courts and everything. So yeah, that was basically my idea and my push for dispute resolution.
Indeed, amazing to know about it, ma'am. Ma'am, please enlighten us about your journey from a student to a founder and director of Resolution Fund.
In essence, I'm still a student. So it's still a journey, and I'll tell you what, I don't see that I'm successful. I really am not. I am still struggling every single day, and but the difference is I love my struggle now. I love my struggle because I'm struggling for a subject and I'm struggling for a cause and an idea which I have in myself, and I'm trying to uphold it. So whenever I'm interacting with somebody who is senior in the profession or who is a well-wisher of mine, they generally end up advising me saying, Priyanka, why are you leaving a good academic career? You were teaching in NLS. Why would you leave that? Why would you try doing all this? And mediation has no money. Why don't you at least go to court and you do this mediation as a side business or something like that? And I agree. You know what? I agree. Mediation does not have money, but I still believe it is still the beginning of it. Okay, it does not have money because people don't understand the process. At one point of time, even consumer law, if I have to put through, was something which was not considered as a law. It was just considered as a side thing. We read it as a part of tort law. But then it evolved, right? And now you have consumer courts which are running full swing. So it's going to take time, but I believe in this process. So uh, the journey has been amazing, and it has been a huge struggle because I end up fighting with the idea of success, and I end up fighting with what needs to be done. Uh, and it's not a one day struggle. It happens every day in bits and parts. Sometimes I even have had comments coming from a couple of people around me. They said that, oh, maybe she was thrown out of the job, which is why she left that, and she's doing this. Who leaves a national law school job? So you have to get through that. But uh, but yeah, my journey definitely has been something which makes me happy and inspires me to keep trying and keep doing, because there are some people out there who appreciate it. There are some people out there who support me every day, and there are a lot of people there whom I can help if I keep pushing my boundaries. So yeah, and in a sense, I'm still a student. I am still doing my PhD, so I'm still a research student. Yeah.
Ma'am, uh, also tell us about your journey to be a trained arbitrator from IIAM and accredited international business mediator and negotiator from IMI, like you said you are. So, ma'am, I really want to know about it. That what is your journey, how you opt for it, what was your main thinking about it, like that.
Right. I'll just basically give you a brief about it. So when I came back from Auckland, when I left my law firm job there, so when I came back, I wanted to run my own mediation center right from the very beginning. But then I somewhat got an idea that maybe a better way to do it is to teach people about mediation, is to tell them, is to make them aware about it. So I got into academics. That was basically the reason why I got into academics, and that is how I ended up in NLSIU. Because NLSIU had an online consumer mediation center, OCMC, which was working there. So I could fortunately make a jump from KT to school, and I ended up in NLSIU. Uh, so there I was doing mediation, right? But when I was in KT, I wanted to teach mediation. Unfortunately, as you know, it's still not a subject in its own. It's a part of ADR. So when I was there, I constantly had this thing in mind that how do I push my boundary? How do I get into the mediation sector? In India, if you want to be a mediator, one of the mandates of Supreme Court uh, is you need to have a 40 hours mediation training. It's a compulsory thing. Okay. So I had the mediation subject and I had written my dissertation on mediation and everything. But as a part of compulsion, I started digging in courses which I could do to get those 40 hours of training. That is when I landed up in IIAM Kochi, and I took up their course of 40 hours. It was definitely a wonderful course. You know, those 40 hours were amazing, and I went back through all my teaching, and I could brush those up, and more so in Indian context, because a lot of things that I learned in Auckland were more in global context. In IIM, I learned more about how things work in India in more practical terms, you know, and what are the hindrances that we face in India when we are trying to do mediation. So I definitely learned that. Arbitration I did afterwards because I just wanted to, gain some knowledge on the subject. So that was an interesting course as well. And after doing those courses, and after being in NLS, and after seeing mediation, having the opportunity to do a mediation training ourselves through NLS, in 2019, if I'm not wrong, we did one course from NLS. So after doing that, I realized, that I wanted to do a course myself. I might not be as excellent and as experienced as everyone else, but as you say, mediation is not a very old process. Structured mediation, I would say. Mediation is a very old process. Structured mediation is not a very old process. So I presume that the experience a 40-year-old practicing advocate will have is quite similar to what I might have, because the practice is not there for that long. And also, the mediation courses that we have across India at this point of time are very pricey. So the one I did, I paid personally, I paid around 50K. Okay, so as a student, it's really difficult. You can do that when you're earning and everything, and if you have the leverage to pay that much, but it's on the higher note. So, which is why I thought of trying to do some training, and that is when I got in collaboration with a lot of international bodies. So I got in collaboration with BIMS, which is the Bangladesh International Mediation Society. So they do a lot of trainings, and I keep going regularly to Bangladesh to be a part of those trainings. So those are much, easier to manage financially, and it gives a different perspective. So yeah, the training course was definitely very interesting, but I definitely know that there are much more scope to adding and subtracting to it. And another fun part about courses is, if I have to suggest, it's better to do a lot of courses, similar mediation courses from different people. Not that a very pricey one is going to be of great benefit, because there is no recommendation or there is no IIT of mediation. That the moment you pass that course, you're going to be employed as a mediator. There's nothing like that. So it is all your idea and your understanding of what mediation is. So the more you interact about mediation with different people, the more perspectives you gain. Okay, so you create a more concrete understanding of the subject. So yeah, so now basically that's what I try to do. So
Okay, ma'am. Ma'am, I just have a follow-up question with respect to this. Is that you talked about international collaboration, right? Uh,
hmm,
Ma'am, how you approached and like how one should get it, like because as you said, these are all expensive courses and everything. So please elaborate us on this field so that other people also get encouraged, because financial constraint is everywhere. So students should be motivated in this field. So, ma'am, please elaborate in this.
right. See, what happens with mediation courses, at least in India, is what I know. It's a 40-hour course. Okay, only after a 40 hours course you get certified as a mediator. Okay, and that certification can be given by anybody who is a mediator. Right. So, uh, since there is no fixed body in India or a fixed system which gives out or hands out certificates, like you have Bar Council of India for the bar, right? There is nothing like that for mediation. So, those 40 hours training is a tedious process, which is why institutions end up charging a lot of money. What I had in my mind was to try to do a course which is somewhere in the range of 5 to 10,000, so that even if a student is doing an internship, you end up earning around that amount, right? So, which is why I had that idea, and I started putting up or approaching people on my LinkedIn profile. LinkedIn definitely helped a lot. As a professional, I would definitely advise you and everyone, to try and be as much active on LinkedIn as possible. It really, really helps you connect to a lot of people, a lot of good people looking for good work to be done. So that's how I ended up. Of course, IIM also helped me in creating a couple of contacts. Also, since I was working in NLSIU, and specifically so in the mediation department itself, and I had the opportunity to do a Ministry of Justice project, which was there in NLSIU that point of time. So I was majorly handling that project under Professor Patil. So from there also, I developed a lot of contacts, and that's how I ended up in such a position. But my idea is basically to start hosting trainings. I will not probably be looking forward to giving a 40 hours training course. Uh, in my opinion, though, if you want to learn mediation, it's going to take a lifetime, which is why I'm doing a PhD on it. But if you need to understand the crux of the matter, it can happen in 15 to 20 hours as well if you're really into it. And what happens is if you lessen that time, you're also able to, charge less. Because if, let's say, if I'm going to set up a training for a week, it is obvious that there will be extra added charges. So that was my idea, and that is how I ended up meeting a lot of people. So the courses that we have under BIMS is basically a 2-day course uh, that happens in Bangladesh. For now, it happens in Dhaka, and it's a 2-day course, and it's a 2-day introductory course to mediation, or sometimes to arbitration, or to ADR. So I am looking forward to replicate something like that in India, and bring that up so that people, students, professionals, homemakers, shopkeepers, businessmen, anybody who is interested in that subject, even remotely, will have the motivation and the ease of the pocket to actually take up that course. Okay, I'll put that through. Yeah, so for the international collaborations, basically, I had my CV put out on LinkedIn, and I got a couple of contacts. So a couple of people contacted me through LinkedIn itself, and that's how I got in touch with the Bangladesh International Mediation Society. I got in touch with them, and they called me up for a training once, and when I went there and gave a training, so it was a good place. And so we ended up deciding that, okay, this is how this is going to be. And that's how I ended up taking trainings for them. Likewise, I went for a couple of international conferences. When I was in Auckland, I went for an international mediation conference there. And when I visited that conference, I made a couple of contacts. There was another conference that I visited in Tanzania. So there we ended up creating the Africa Asia Mediation Association with a lot of international people there. And that's how we have started working. We do have the AMA, we call it AMA, Africa Asia Mediation Association. We do have the AMA conference 2020 coming up in August as well. And that's how we ended up collaborating together. And so I was approached on LinkedIn. There has been instances where I have approached people on LinkedIn as well. For one example, there's this lady. She's in Bangalore. Okay, she also practices mediation, and I could resonate with her idea of mediation. So I approached her. I went to Bangalore. She teaches in a school there, apart from doing mediation trainings. So I went to her class. She teaches in class 11, 12. So I went to her class. I took a training for class 11, 12 students on the understanding of ADR and mediation. And we ended up collaborating like that and sharing ideas and everything. So yeah, that's how this model works.
Ma'am, thank you so much. Ma'am, lastly, please say a few words to our readers who will or viewers. You would like to suggest about the exposure of mediation, that how it's helpful, why we should be coming, and it is more convenient. Why?
Right. I'll just share a very small story for anybody to understand mediation. It's a concept from Africa. Okay, so they call it Ubuntu. The word Ubuntu basically means we are. I am because we are. So an example of this is there was this one American photographer who was there in an African village, and the village was really stuck with poverty. So he gathered a couple of kids from the village and he asked them to make a circle. He kept a box of chocolates in the center and he said, I will count from 1 to 10. And when I stop counting, the one who rushes and gets the chocolate box first wins the entire box of chocolates. Okay. So he counted from 1 to 10. And at the end of 10, he expected, all the kids to just hurry up and, kind of snatch those chocolates from each other. What he saw was all the kids were standing, patiently. They all went in, they opened the box of chocolates and they shared it with everyone. Okay. So he asked one of the kids, like, why did you not grab it first? So the kid said, if I am going to eat all the chocolates, then everybody around me is going to be sad. And if everybody is going to be sad, who will play with me? And if there is nobody around me, then I will be sad. Right. So this is basically the seed of mediation. Whenever there are dispute, it could be as small as something within the family, or it could be as big as a property dispute, or it could be as big as an international dispute, right? It could be as big as that. There are always perspectives which we fail to see and understand. We are always stuck in this possibility of what is right and what is wrong. We fail to understand there are perspectives attached to that as well. In most of the cases, I'm not talking about the criminal cases, those are definitely different. But apart from that, whenever we are talking about dispute, so there is always a perspective. Processes like mediation, conciliation, negotiation, they end up acknowledging those perspectives. It doesn't say this is right. It doesn't say this is wrong. And when you get to judge and when you get to decide what is good for you and what you want out of the situation, it's an immense power, and it saves relationships, which is the biggest deal. So someone might come and tell me, then okay, so mediation is good for only personal matters where you have to save relationships. But that's not the case. Don't you have to save relationships when there are disputes over boundaries of over international boundaries between countries? Don't you have to save relationships when there is a dispute in a business matter where there are two business partners who have to resolve something? There is always at the end of every dispute there is a human element there, and to recognize that and to make sure that that element stays is very important. Also, the idea of justice is also very variant. We had this guest, Mr. Aman Hingorani. I think he was there in KIT itself when I heard him say this. Uh, so he said there was a case where a speedy courts were set up and they wanted to give justice to people, and so they started digging up all the old cases and they yeah, sure. So basically, they started digging up all the old cases, and there was this one case of a woman who was raped, and she wanted to, push that through, but that never came across. Now, 16 years down the lane, it was proved that she was actually raped, and the judgment was sent out in the newspaper. Now, this lady had already moved on from that case. She had a family, she had a son, and now suddenly, out of the blue, she gets to know that this was something that had happened, and justice has been served. Now imagine if the lady actually got justice at that point of time. Her personal life was ruined. There were people questioning her about what happened all those years back. So there are instances where it's very difficult like that. I'm not picking up on this particular example. What I mean to say is mediation is a concept. It's not about saying, "Ki, "Arey, chalo yaar, khatam karo jhamela, arey, settle kar lo yaar." That's not mediation. You know, that's not mediation at all. It's a process, it's science, it's a lot of psychology, and it is definitely a lot of empathy. And I would advise and suggest people, students, everybody from any profession to definitely learn, more so lawyers, because whenever somebody is in trouble, they either visit the doctors or they visit the lawyers. So we most definitely should be able to resolve those. That's my idea. Yeah.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Thank you. It was honor listening you.